I took a quick look around at America in 2019 and concluded we're not doing so well as a people and a nation. I'm no expert on history, but it doesn't make sense that with all the blessings and advantages we have at this point in time, we are going backwards, kind of like the nation of Israel after Solomon. We have some of the worst possible people in politics. I'm not talking about President Trump. He's trying to do what is morally and constitutionally right for the American people, without a lot of help from the thousands of pastors we have, who, unlike the pastors at the founding, made the biblical arguments for independence and revolt and did all the heavy lifting for us. Whatever you think of President Trump, this guy has an army of resistance in our government and media trying to destroy him every day. Don't you find this a bit curious, as none of this is happening to our pastors? It's not that our men of God don't believe that the law is the gospel. Their law is the 75,000 pages of IRS code, the administrative state, the EPA, every other lawless government agency, and bent over backwards to obey Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, and Nancy Pelosi types. Because secular government was ordained by God, not selfish individual rights given by God of our American founding and framing. I decided to help our guys out. I think they are just confused, or maybe a little too smart. Most of our guys have been around for 30 to 40 years, a long time to be confused, and reading and teaching the Bible all that time. So I decided to read the Bible for myself to find out the gospel truth. Starting with the Gospels in the New Testament to prove the biblical truth that the gospel is the law because Jesus says it is. John 1:17, for the law was given through Moses, grace and truth were realized through Jesus Christ. But we also know from John 1:1-4 that Jesus is the Word and was in the beginning with God. So Jesus gave the law to Moses through a mediator, the entire Old Testament law, including the 10 Commandments. God gave the law which revealed who he was and what he required of his people. The law was many things, but revelation and salvation were accomplished through keeping the law. The law was given as a first purpose to be kept. That was the whole law. Astounding. All the answers to the meaning of life come through keeping it. This is throughout the book of Psalms and Proverbs. If you can get one main lesson from the history of the Israelites in the Old Testament, when they violated the commandments, they lost out big time. New Testament, on the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5:17-20. Think not that I have come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. He really means that. Verily, verily, I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Amazing. Why doesn't he say, except the righteousness you get through me? He doesn't say that. He says, except your righteousness. You would think our righteousness came through the liberal progressive doctrine of justification. We can't keep the law. But from the God-man who wrote the law, you want to get to heaven? Keep the law. And further, study the righteousness and unrighteousness of the Pharisees, because they ain't going to make it. He continues with the Sermon on the Mount and on high standards of moral action, works of the law that lead to success, and the loser is the fool who hears but does not act. Jesus continually slammed and mocked the Pharisees for positioning themselves as teachers of the law, yet they didn't recognize him as God in the fulfillment of the law, not keeping the law. They were not the great moralists with their high standards, as we are told. In fact, in Matthew 23, Jesus condemned them for being immoral in several ways. Matthew 23:23, Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give 1/10 of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. Jesus condemned the law teachers for not keeping the law. The more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. How come nobody told me mercy and faithfulness were matters of the law? I was always told these were the gospel, separate from the law. Should we trust Jesus? Stephen had a similar rebuke to the teachers of the law when he stood before the high priest in Acts 7. Acts 7, 51, 53. You stiff-necked people, your hearts and ears are still uncircumcised. You are just like your ancestors. You always resist the Holy Spirit. Was there ever a prophet your ancestors did not persecute? They even killed those who predicted the coming of the righteous one. And now you have betrayed and murdered him, you who have received the law that was given through angels, but have not obeyed it. Resisting the Holy Spirit leads to lawlessness. Those who are blessed by giving of the law did not keep it. They did the opposite. We also know that what the cardinal sin is, resisting the Holy Spirit and not keeping the law. Jesus said, keep my commandments. If you love me, keep my commandments. Don't call me Lord if you don't keep my commandments. What commandments? The commandments of the law in the Old and New Testament. Teaching the law and the full Lord explanation of it. This is the volume of teaching throughout the Bible. Our pastors have made the most important teaching in the Bible into a theological discussion that has become a religious ideology, where keeping the 10 laws always has adverse motives, and we need to be constantly warned. Teaching of the law frustrates us because we can't keep it. Yet I have not heard of a story of anyone like Luther driven to the point of desperation, trying to be acceptable to God, confessing his sins 6 times a day to the priest, trying to keep the law. The teachers tell us we are victims of the moral law, not evangelists for it. But on the other hand, when it comes to the infinite laws of the state, we must be eager to bend over backwards to practice obedience to their schizoid mandates that don't apply to the lawmakers. Keep these or else. The evangelical pastor will use passages in Paul's letters in Galatians, Corinthians, and others to teach their screwy doctrine, because it appears at first blush that Paul aligns with their teaching. But they don't deal with Paul's teaching in Romans 2, where he clearly lays out how the doers of the law will be justified, not the hearers. Romans 2:13, and goes on to explain that the mandate is keeping the moral law that is either written down and or on one's conscience. Circumcision is of the heart by the Spirit and manifest outwardly in keeping the requirements of the moral law. Psalm 19:11. The law of the Lord is perfect, transforming the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the spirit. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yes, more than much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is your servant warned. In keeping them is great reward. Psalm 19:7-11.